The previous night had been scary, and Melissa felt sore everywhere. She walked outside, hailed a taxi, and went straight to a popular private hospital in New York. After waiting for 10 minutes, she was called into the examination room by Dr. Steele, who was a man in his 50s with glasses and a wart on the side of his nose. "Miss Kennedy, your condition's quite serious, and you should have come here straight away," Dr. Steele said, frowning at her. "We'll have to watch for any signs of infection, but in the meantime, I'll send you for a CT scan." "Thank you, Dr. Steele, I understand," she said, smiling and not at all worried about what the doctor had said. She stared at him and asked, "Doctor, what do you think caused this?" He thought for a moment and said, "Maybe you were taking a bath or having a swim and you were accidentally scratched by something." She slowly shook her head. "No, that's not right. Guess again." Dr. Steele suspected that there might be something wrong with Melissa. He was a little embarrassed as he said, "Well, perhaps you used some sort of toy and were a little too, strenuous." "Still not right," she said with a glimmer in her eyes. "Miss Kennedy, you shouldn't joke about something like that," Dr. Steele said. "The hospital has strict rules about that kind of thing." "Doctor, would you like to examine me?" Oh yes. He slowly reached out a hand toward her, and just as he was about to touch her, she snapped a few photos on her cell phone. "What?" he spluttered. What was the girl doing? "Don't panic," Melissa said with a sneer. "As long as you do what I tell you, I won't post these photos online," she smirked. "You know what would happen if these photos were made public." Dr. Steele realized he had been tricked. What was he going to do? If anyone saw those photos, he would be ruined. "Okay, what do you want from me?" he asked, gritting his teeth. "Just one simple thing," she said. "Should anyone investigate my injuries, you need to say that they're a result of Also, you need to say that it's likely I'm pregnant. With your reputation as an expert, it shouldn't be difficult to convince everyone." She was worried that Alex might send someone to investigate her story, so she had to make sure the doctor wouldn't contradict her. "Fine," he reluctantly agreed. He had no choice. "Who are you trying to con? And how did you receive those injuries?" "I'm not telling you who he is," she said. "And it's none of your business how I got hurt. Just remember what I told you to say if anyone asks." The fewer people who knew, the better. She didn't want to explain what had happened the previous night. Melissa had thrown Alex onto the bed and taken off their clothes, but she had forgotten one very important thing. The knife she had used to knock him out had left him unresponsive. It had been impossible for her to have talks with him, so she couldn't get. She had tried for half an hour, but then she had given up. Now she had to pretend that she had slept with Alex. Melissa was no longer lying. To make Alex think it had been her first time. To her relief, when Alex had seen the blood on the bedsheet, he seemed to believe that he had taken her virginity. Alex called Ken Stokes and instructed him to find Debbie as quickly as possible. When Sam Woodsworth received Ken's message, he sent people to search for Debbie while he stayed with Alex in the Azalea guest house. Sam looked at Alex's distressed expression, but he couldn't do anything to help, and that left him feeling uneasy and afraid. Alex sat on a stone tablet in the luxurious courtyard of the guest house. The place was beautiful with its blue and white tiles, but he barely noticed it. He leaned his arm on the table and said nothing. He sat there for hours. The trees stood tall and unmoving, and their leaves rustled in the breeze. He wasn't in the right state of mind to appreciate his surroundings, and his mood grew steadily heavier. He clenched his fist tighter and tighter. Around 6 p.m., the sky began to darken. Black clouds covered the sky, and not a hint of blue remained. A few muffled rumbles of thunder could be heard in the distance. "Hurry, get inside!" Several voices urged from outside the courtyard, followed by many hurried footsteps. Alex raised his head and saw Ken approaching with a few young men who were dragging a slightly familiar-looking man along with them. "What happened? Do you have news about Debbie?" Alex asked anxiously as he stood up. "We haven't found Miss Stonehill yet," Ken said, lowering his head. "But I've sent someone out to look for her, so we should find her soon." "Useless," Alex exclaimed, snapping under the pressure. He cursed angrily at Ken. "Why are you here? Go away! Get out and keep searching until you find her! All of you, get out of here!" "Yes, sir," Ken answered. "But Mr. Ambrose, I think you should speak to this man. His name is Lou, and he was the one who picked up Miss Stonehill at the airport. I didn't have time to interrogate him before I brought him here." Alex's gaze quickly turned to Lou with such hatred in his eyes that everyone trembled in fear. "You!" Alex recognized him. This was the man who had been about to molest Kelly at the gate of Preston University the day before. Things weren't looking good. He grabbed Lou's neck. "Speak," he ordered. "Where did you take Debbie?" "Sir, you're mistaken," Lou whined. "It wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about." He was scared to death, and there were so many angry people there. How could he possibly remember what Melissa wanted him to say? "You're lying," Ken slapped him. "If you don't tell me the truth right now, I promise I will make you regret being born, and then I'll start on your family." Okay, I'll tell you the truth, I swear," Lou said nervously, intimidated by Ken. He quickly thought it through. With the state Alex was in, there was no doubt he would react violently if Lou told the truth, and then Lou would die. All he could do was follow Melissa's instructions and hope she would protect him. "Yes, I lied," he said carefully, keeping his head down. "When I arrived at the airport, I saw Debbie, and she was really pretty. Then I heard her call her boyfriend Alex, so I pretended I was his friend to trick her into getting into my car." Debbie had told Janice that one of Alex's friends was going to pick her up. But Alex didn't care about that. What he wanted to know was where Debbie was now and what Lou had done to her. The sound of more hurried footsteps came from outside the yard. One of Ken's men walked in carrying a pink suitcase. Behind him were two men who were escorting Lou's wife. Alex's eyes widened as he walked over and picked up the suitcase, recognizing it as Debbie's from the panda sticker on the side. "Mr. Ambrose, we found this in Lou's bedroom closet," one of the men said, "and his wife looked quite flustered, so we brought her here as well." "Tell me what happened," Alex demanded, glaring at Lou. "Where did you take her? Where is she now?" He opened the suitcase and took out a black book. There was a lock on the cover, but he applied a little pressure and popped it open. "I drove Debbie to the Pavilion Hotel," Lou said, trembling with fear. As Alex listened, he opened the book and discovered it was Debbie's diary. April 2nd. "I jumped into Ramsey Lake, and I thought I was going to die, but a boy had followed me there and saved me. Then we ate together, and it felt so good to have someone to share that with." April 13th. "I don't understand why Alex stole Mr. Morgan's money. I hate him, but I can't let him go. I have to leave school to work and pay off his debt. But as long as he's okay, it's much more important than me going to school." April 25th. Harmony Island. "I just found out that Alex didn't lie to me. His family's wealth is more than I could have ever imagined, and now I feel like I'm not worthy of him at all. I must try my best to be independent and not be a burden to him." Everything that had happened was recorded in the diary. Alex had thought that he had misunderstood Debbie, but seeing this, he was learning something new. In their relationship, she had never felt that she was good enough. "Silly girl, why would you think that?" he muttered, his heart aching. He skipped over many of the pages and went straight to the entry where she went to Chicago. It began to rain. "Keep going," Alex said, flipping through the pages of Debbie's diary. "Yes," Lou replied, his voice trembling. He knew that what he was about to say would probably infuriate Alex. Alex had opened the diary to May 25th, the day Debbie went to Chicago. May 25th. As soon as I got off the plane, I started thinking about Alex. I'm pathetic. If he knew what I was thinking, he'd laugh. We had a video chat, and I still insisted that he stay in New York, but deep down I really wanted him to come and be with me. May 26th. I was really jealous when I saw that Melissa and the others had boyfriends coming to pick them up after rehearsals. It's really lonely on the bus every night. May 29th. I haven't called Alex for several days. I'm afraid that if I see him, I won't be able to stop crying. It would be too embarrassing to have him see me like this. I can't be a burden to him. May 30th. It's really wet and cold in Chicago right now. I got soaked coming back to the hotel, and I'm still very cold now, even in my bed. The window in my room faces northwest, the direction of New York. I stared out that window for ages, missing Alex and wishing he would come to Chicago to be with me. I wish he could hear me calling to him." Alex stared at Debbie's delicate handwriting, and he could almost feel her loneliness coming through the words on the page. He regretted that he had chosen to remain in New York. If he hadn't, Debbie wouldn't have been so lonely in Chicago. Finally, he found the last entry of the diary. He hoped to find some clues in it, but the contents completely exceeded his expectations. June 4th. It's cloudy today. Yesterday I participated in the Sky's the Limit talent show. I never expected Melissa to set me up. She poured something into my water, and I was in so much pain during our performance. Every time I moved, I felt like I was being Melissa framed me for poisoning Angelina's dog, and Angelina slapped me twice, really hard. Only Janice and Rita stood up for me. The dog rushed at me, and my stomach hurt so much that I could barely move. But I had to run, and every step felt as if someone was stabbing me. Alex's eyes shone with tears. He clenched his fists tighter and tighter, completely unaware that he was damaging the diary. When I was in the icy cold water, the dog bit me. I felt that I was better off dead. Every second in this world just brought more suffering, and eventually I chose to give up. It was so quiet in the water, but then I saw the diamond necklace and thought of Alex. And I knew I couldn't leave this world without saying goodbye to him. I didn't blame him at all. I only hoped that he would live a happy life without me. Tears slid down Alex's face and his hands began to tremble. He couldn't imagine how much Debbie had suffered that day. Then Justin saved me. I called Alex, but he didn't answer. He just texted me to say his friend would pick me up. It's time for me to go back to New York. I'll do my best to keep what happened in Chicago from Alex. I don't want him to feel bad. After reading Debbie's diary, Alex kneeled on the ground and cried out in grief. Debbie's beautiful handwriting was captivating, and sorrow pierced his heart. When Debbie had been in danger, and when she had needed him the most, he had been happily drinking and chatting. His heart felt like it was being torn apart, and there was nobody he hated more than himself. He slapped his face twice, and then dropped his hands onto the ground, crying sorrowfully. "Mr. Ambrose," Ken said, frowning as he squatted to help him up. Alex's behavior was making everyone nervous. Alex burst into tears. He looked at Lou, who was still being held down, and asked, "What did you do to Debbie after you took her to the hotel? Where is she now?" Lou was so scared that his legs gave way and he dropped to the ground. His wife was also scared as she kneeled beside him and their hearts were pounding. "After I took her to the hotel, well, I wanted to, with her," Lou babbled, trying to stand up. He roared. Lou wrapped his arms around his head and curled his body, not daring to resist. When Alex stopped, Lou threw himself onto the ground in front of him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ambrose," he sniveled. And I deserve to die. I'm just a filthy animal." "What happened next?" Alex demanded as he glared at Lou. He was a little afraid of what Lou might say next. "I didn't," Lou started. He wanted to explain that he hadn't touched Debbie, hoping it would lessen Alex's anger, but then he heard a woman's voice coming from outside the courtyard. "Who are you people? Let go of me." It was Melissa's voice. A couple of men arrived, dragging Melissa with them. "Mr. Ambrose, Mr. Stokes, we checked Lou's phone and discovered that Miss Stonehill was sent a message claiming a friend of Mr. Ambrose would pick her up," one of the men said, his expression serious. "The message was sent by this woman." Alex glared at Melissa, feeling nothing but hatred. He should have guessed that she was behind this, but after spending the night with her, his attitude toward her had softened a little. The coldness in Alex's gaze made Melissa tremble. Two of Alex's men pushed her to her knees in front of him. "Go on," Alex said, turning back to Lou. "What happened next?" "Me and her." Lou stole a glance at Melissa and found her staring at him. Her eyes narrowed, and he gulped with fear. He was convinced that Melissa's family was really powerful, and his survival depended on her goodwill. From Lou's point of view, he had no choice but to do what Melissa had ordered. "I'm sorry, sir," he said.
I couldn't help myself. I'm so sorry.
Alex's mind went blank, and he staggered back, almost falling. You put your hands on Debbie? He asked. When Ken saw his reaction, he ordered his men to beat up Lou, but Alex stopped him. What happened next?
Then my wife arrived, and I was afraid that she would find out, so I hung Debbie out the window, Lou said. But then my wife came in and she...
He stopped, too scared to continue.
What? Alex shouted. Speak. My wife opened the window, Lou said, cowering, and Debbie fell.
When he finished speaking, he lowered his head and said,
Mr. Ambrose, I'm sorry. I deserve to die.
Alex's heart ached.
Where is she now? My wife and I ran downstairs, but Debbie had already disappeared, Lou said. I don't know where she went. Maybe someone took her to the hospital.
Lou's wife looked shocked. Round everyone up and send them around all the hospitals in New York, Ken said. One of his men left the room to carry out the order. Lou trembled as he lay on the ground, sneaking glances at Melissa. He had done what she had told him to do, and he hoped she would keep her promise. Melissa gave Lou a look of reassurance. Alex closed his eyes and tears streamed down his face. His heart was filled with sorrow, and he truly hated himself. The thunder grew louder, and the rain came down even harder. Alex roared in rage. He didn't care that she was a woman.
Alex, are you planning to beat them to death? Melissa asked, still kneeling on the ground. Calm down. Debbie has been assaulted, but what's done is done.
She had to protect Lou. Otherwise, he might change his story and tell Alex the truth. If that happened, then all her efforts would be for nothing.
Shut up,
Alex cursed angrily at her.
I was just telling the truth, she said. Think about it. Debbie has already been ruined by another man. You're an important member of a powerful family. So can you really accept a woman who wasn't pure? No, I didn't think so. Vent your anger on them and then let them go.
Alex stared at Melissa and walked toward her, one step at a time.
So it doesn't really matter where Debbie is now, does it? She said. But it's okay. I can give you anything that she could.
She panicked as she noticed Alex's expression.
Alex, please, I'm just trying to help.
Alex bellowed as he looked over to where Lou and his wife were still lying prone. He stretched his hand out toward Ken and waited.
Yes, sir,
Ken responded, shocked. Alex had never been this violent before. Ken asked his men for a gun and then handed it over to Alex.
Mr. Ambrose, please have mercy, Lou begged. Please don't kill me. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave, anything. Mr. Ambrose, please let me go, Lou's wife joined in. I wasn't really involved. I didn't know. Debbie is my woman, Alex yelled. No one else can touch her, especially not you.
He pointed the gun at Lou.
No, Mr. Ambrose, please,
Lou pleaded, desperate to explain that he hadn't really slept with Debbie, and he had only been repeating what Melissa had told him to say.
Wait, listen to me. I swear, I didn't.
2 consecutive shots rang out, and Lou never got to finish speaking. Their bodies crumpled, and a pool of blood gradually formed around them. Melissa gaped in shock. She had no idea how powerful his family was. Yet Melissa's heart thundered as she stared at Lou's body. His vacant eyes looked right back at her. The rumble of thunder grew stronger, and the sound of rain grew even louder. Lightning flashed, highlighting his face and making him appear especially menacing. She couldn't stop shaking.
Alex, what are you going to do?
How could this have happened to Debbie unless you were involved? He asked.
I'm your girlfriend. You can't touch me no matter what I've done. We spent the night in bed together, and now you're treating me like this? What kind of man are you?
Don't speak to Mr. Ambrose like that.
I am Alex's woman, and I'm going to marry him.
She stood up, took the hospital report from her bag, and threw it at Alex.
Take a good look at this. I have internal damage, which is likely to get infected, and you did this to me. The doctor also said that there's a high chance of pregnancy. I might give you a son, and you're treating me like this? Don't you have a conscience?
What are you doing? Ken demanded, stopping her. Get back on your knees. You wouldn't allow Melissa to be so disrespectful to Alex. I never want to see you again, Mr. Ambrose, Ken said, a little confused. Even if Alex had slept with Melissa,
It didn't make any difference. Get her out of here before I change my mind, Alex shouted at Melissa. She was terrified that he would go crazy, so she turned around and ran. But it seemed like he had listened to her, so she would come back and speak to him again after she had given him enough time to calm down. 5 minutes later, Ken received a call from one of his men. Mr. Ambrose, we haven't found any trace of Miss Stonehill in any hospital in New York, Ken reported. Check again, Alex said, his face ravaged with grief. I'd also check hospitals outside the city. I need you to dig deep and find Debbie for me. A man with a gloomy expression walked in and informed them that Lou had taken Debbie to the Pavilion Hotel, and Ken told him to investigate further. Mr. Ambrose, Mr. Stokes, we've checked the surveillance footage outside the Pavilion Hotel, one of the men reported. It appears that Miss Stonehill was taken away in a car. We're currently searching the city for it. In the meantime, this is the surveillance video. He held out his phone and showed Alex the footage in question. On the screen, Debbie fell from the 4th floor and hit her head. Then a car stopped next to her, and a man and a woman got out of it. They observed Debbie for a few seconds before lifting her into the car and driving away. Although the couple's faces were not particularly clear in the video, it should still be possible to identify them. Alex ordered his men to find them as soon as possible and bring Debbie back to him. It was still raining, and he was completely drenched, but he refused to move. Debbie's fate was still unknown, and he didn't care about anything else. Mr. Ambrose, you should get out of the rain, Sam said worriedly. You'll get ill if you stay out here. Sam, Ken, and 6 of their men remained outside with Alex. No, Alex said. Mr. Wordsworth, Mr. Stokes, you can go back inside, but I'm going to wait here for Debbie. Rain ran down his face, but his expression was firm. He was confident that Debbie would return safely. But Sam wanted to persuade Alex to move inside, but Ken stopped him, pulling Sam away. Mr. Ambrose won't listen, Ken told him. He doesn't care about anything except Miss Stonehill's return. But with our resources, it shouldn't take us long to find those 2 people and bring Miss Stonehill back, Sam said. They remained standing next to Alex in the courtyard with the cold rain falling around them. 1 hour passed, then 2 hours, then 5 hours, then an entire night. To Ken's surprise, they still hadn't discovered Debbie's whereabouts by 5 o'clock the next morning. Even more shockingly, he hadn't managed to find the couple who had taken her away. With Ken's resources, he should have been able to track them down as soon as they stepped foot in any hotel, restaurant, or supermarket in New York. But neither of them had shown up in any of these places, and he hadn't been able to find any trace of them within the past 10 hours. He didn't dare tell Alex, knowing it would only make him even more worried about Debbie. The rain still hadn't stopped. Mr. Stokes, there any news yet? Alex asked, turning his head toward Ken. His face and lips were pale. His voice shook and his body trembled. I'm sorry, Mr. Ambrose, Ken said, feeling guilty. My men are useless. He broke off when Alex's eyes rolled back in his head and he fell to the ground, landing in a puddle. Mr. Ambrose, Ken exclaimed as he and Sam rushed to his side. They called for a doctor, who told them that Alex had a fever from staying out in the cold rain for so long. It took 5 days for Alex to get better. During those 5 days, Ken actively searched for traces of the couple who had taken Debbie. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he searched New York and the surrounding areas, he didn't find any clues. It was as if they had just vanished into thin air along with Debbie. During those 5 days of being sick in bed, Alex had looked through Debbie's diary every day, and he had realized that he couldn't afford to sink into depression. He had to pull himself together if he were to have any hope of finding her. Alex understood that Ken's failure to find Debbie within 24 hours meant that she might have been taken elsewhere, and the search for her might become an extended one. Every day he listened to Ken's progress report, and then directed his men to keep searching. As soon as they found any clues about Debbie, they were to report back to him. Ken gradually expanded the scope of his search to cover the entire East Coast.
Alex felt that they were getting closer and closer to finding Debbie. He had been staying at the Azalea guest house for long enough, and now he was growing bored and wanted to return to Preston University. After thanking Ken for his assistance, Alex dragged himself outside and got on a bus back to the university. He walked over to Ramsey Lake, where he had the most beautiful memories of Debbie. He slowly approached the lake and was stunned to see Debbie standing there, looking the same when they had first met. She looked like she was about to jump into the water. "No, Debbie, no!" he shouted, rushing toward her. At the sound of his voice, she turned her head in surprise as he rushed toward her, knocking her to the ground before she could react. "Debbie, what are you doing? Where have you been these past few days?" he asked, rolling on the lawn with her. "Alex?" Debbie said softly. "You—" Alex watched in disbelief as her face seemed to change in front of his eyes, and he realized that this wasn't Debbie. It was Kelly. He quickly let her go and stood up. "Where have you been?" Kelly asked, slowly getting to her feet. Her face was slightly flushed. She had made a point of asking around about Alex and Debbie, and she had learned about some of their histories. To tempt Alex, she had even started to wear the same kind of clothes as Debbie. She knew that Ramsey Lake was a meaningful place for them, so she had gone there to look around. "I'm sorry," Alex apologized. He sat beside the lake, looking out at the rippling water, and remembered everything that had happened there. "Where's Debbie?" Kelly asked, walking over to him. His behavior was a little strange. Why was he so flustered? "She's been kidnapped," he said in a flat voice. He had to find her quickly and bring her back. He coughed a few times and then sneezed. "Are you sick?" Kelly asked, her expression serious. His face was very pale, and it was obvious that he was ill. "Come on, I'll help you inside. It's too windy out here, and you don't want your health to get any worse." She started to help him up, but he shook her off. "I'm fine." Kelly was used to his behavior. She simply sighed and stood quietly beside him, keeping him company. Kelly stood beside Alex at Ramsey Lake for 2 hours. The wind was fierce, and Alex coughed and sneezed frequently. She was really worried about him, but all she could do was stand beside him, so he wasn't alone. Alex's deep feelings for Debbie frustrated Kelly, and for the first time she doubted herself. Would she be able to steal him away from her? "It's noon," she said, squatting down beside him. "Why don't we go and get some lunch?" "I'm not hungry, but you can go," he said, his eyes still trained on the lake, as if he could see Debbie out there. Kelly helplessly looked at him, and then she turned around and left. A little later, she came back with some food. She handed a box to Alex and said, "I brought you lunch. Eat it or else you'll get really weak." Alex felt a trace of warmth toward her when he realized she hadn't left him, but had instead gone to get him food. "I don't want it," he said. "You can eat it." He was careful to keep his face expressionless. He knew how Kelly felt about him, and he wasn't going to encourage her. "Come on, have some," she teased him, smiling. "I bought 2, and I don't even want you to pay me back." She wanted him to relax a little, but she was running out of ideas. She just wanted him to eat properly. "I told you I didn't want it," he yelled, knocking the box onto the ground. He was stunned when he saw the food spilling out. She had brought him seafood risotto, which had a special meaning for him. "Why would you buy me this?" he asked in shock. "I've asked around about you," she admitted, feeling hurt by his reaction. "I know that when Debbie jumped into the lake, this is what you brought her. And I know you miss her, so I thought this might help you feel closer to her." She shrugged. "I know that you and Debbie have a strong relationship, but I still like you. It's not like I was the one who destroyed your relationship." She bent down, picked up the box, and put it aside. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "What am I missing?" Kelly wondered. "Why is Alex so patient with Melissa, despite all the evil things she's done? And I've always been nice to him, and he's so cold toward me.
Do all men behave like this? Okay, then, I forgive you, she said. Now eat your meal. She didn't look at him as she handed him a box full of food. Eat up. If you throw it away again, I won't go and get you more. Alex took the box and opened the lid, breathing in the aroma of seafood risotto. Have you eaten? He asked. What do you think? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I brought us a box each, but you threw one away. Then you eat first and I'll take what's left, he said, passing the box to her. Kelly's heart warmed. With a slight shift of her eyes, she picked up another fork. Since we're both hungry, then let's eat together, she said. They sat on the lawn and placed the box of seafood risotto on top of a rock. They took turns to eat. Eating began to relax. The situation was very similar to when Alex and Debbie had eaten this meal together, and Alex suddenly realized that Kelly was a nice girl. The moment he thought this, he felt guilty. He didn't even know where Debbie was, or if she was okay. And so why was he thinking about another girl? It was disrespectful to Debbie. So he lowered his head and went back to eating before Kelly noticed anything. It wasn't long before they had finished the food. Oh, I wanted to ask you if you would come with me to my family gathering tomorrow, Kelly asked nervously. You could just show up for a little while and then leave whenever you want. Would you please come? Her family had been pressuring her to find a boyfriend, so she wanted to take Alex with her. When her relatives saw him, they would think he was her boyfriend without her having to say so. It's okay if you don't want to go, she said. I just thought I'd ask. I know you're really worried about Debbie and you're not really in the mood for a party. I understand. Alex was staring at her, not saying anything, and she was growing embarrassed. It's fine, she said. Don't worry about it. I'm sure you'll find Debbie soon. I have to go. With that, she picked up the trash and prepared to leave. I'll go, Alex said. What? She asked, gaping at him. Really? You'll come? When he nodded, she couldn't help but laugh excitedly. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Okay, wait for me at the school gate tomorrow, and I'll pick you up there. Bye. With that, she left. Alex hadn't been able to say no to Kelly after everything she had done for him, but he couldn't bear to be paraded around as her boyfriend. Hopefully one day she would understand that he wasn't the man for her. He gazed out at the lake again, thinking about Debbie. By the next day, his physical condition had improved a little, but his mental state was getting worse. At 6 p.m., he was waiting for Kelly in front of the school gate. When she arrived, Kelly, look at him, Sharon said from the front passenger seat. The moment the car had stopped, she spotted Alex, who was dressed in his usual poor clothes. Didn't you tell him that this was your family's reunion? Why is he dressed like that? Is he deliberately trying to embarrass you? Kelly frowned slightly. Alex, did you even listen to what Kelly told you? Sharon asked, getting out of the car and staring angrily at Alex. Is that how you dress for Kelly's family? She noticed that not only was he poorly dressed, but his face was pale and his eyes watery. She stared speechlessly at him and then looked at Kelly and said, Are you really going to bring him to your family's gathering looking like that? Kelly glared at Sharon. She stepped out of the car and walked over to Alex, looking worried. She asked softly, How are you? Maybe you should stay here and rest. I'm not that bad, he said, smiling lightly, but his facial expression told a different story. He had already promised Kelly he would go, and he wasn't about to go back on his word. It's okay, I'll come with you. Sharon snorted, suspecting that Alex wanted to cheat Kelly out of her money. Kelly opened the car door and let Alex into the back seat, and then she and Sharon sat in the front. Open the window a bit, Sharon said, glaring at him in the rearview mirror. If you're catching a cold, then keep it to yourself. Are you quite finished? Kelly said, her tone annoyed. Sharon glanced at Kelly with a hurt expression, blaming Alex for causing trouble. Kelly drove them to her family's luxurious villa, which was next to Purple Dawn Lake. Nearby was a beautiful orchard, and so far from the city, the area was peaceful. The lake was very quiet at night,
The rippling water, the tall trees by the lake, and the carpet-like meadow all looked like they came from a fairy tale. They could hear the water lapping at the shore, the chirping of insects and the croaking of frogs. The atmosphere was relaxed and pleasant. Voices were carried from the large villa near the lake. It was decorated with colored lights, and tables and recliners were ranged on the lawn. Servants carried wine, fruit, and pastries, and dozens of well-dressed guests chatted in groups of 3 or 5, while mischievous children chased each other. Kelly's 62-year-old grandmother walked out of the house. Her name was Margaret Phillips, and she was in charge of the whole Phillips family. She wore a long dress that showed off her slim figure, and her hair was in a neat bun. Her skin was smooth with only a few small wrinkles, and her eyes were her most startling feature. They were sharp and never seemed to miss a single detail of anything. She gave the impression of dignity and strength, and it was easy to see why she was the head of the family. She walked down the stairs with 2 men wearing suits as they talked about the family business. Everyone lowered their voices when she appeared. The 2 men nodded respectfully at her before turning around and leaving. Only then did the others dare to approach her. "Hello, grandmother." "Mother, you're looking beautiful." "Thank you for inviting me, Aunt." They all knew Margaret well. She valued her family and would always do her best for them. Everyone wanted to make her happy. "Grandmother," said a pretty girl, walking up to Margaret and taking her hand. She leaned into her. "What were you talking about inside? I missed you." "Of all my guests, you have the worst manners," Margaret teased her. "Why, because I missed you too much?" the girl asked in a melodious voice. "Enough," Margaret said. "Stop playing games. Where's your brother Simon?" The girl was Simon's sister, Yvonne. Simon and Yvonne's mother, Elizabeth, stood to the side. With such a large family, Margaret only had time for her own 2 children, which proved that in the Phillips family, some people were more valued than others. Elizabeth felt proud as she glanced at everyone around her, knowing that she was more important than anyone else here. And then she noticed Alice. Margaret doted on Elizabeth's children, but her favorite grandchild was Alice's daughter, Kelly. She always came first. "How should I know where your worthless grandson is?" Yvonne joked with Margaret. She knew that her grandmother didn't love Simon as much as their cousin Kelly, who had been successful in the family business. No one dared to make fun of her. "Grandmother, haven't you noticed that I've brought someone with me?" she asked. Margaret looked at the handsome young man standing behind Yvonne. "This is my boyfriend Brian," Yvonne said, holding his arm as she smiled up at him. "His family owns an internet company that is ranked as one of the top 20 in the industry." "Nice to meet you, grandmother," Brian said as he smiled and extended his hand to her, looking like a perfect gentleman. "Hello," Margaret said, shaking his hand as she scanned him with her sharp eyes. He did look like a rich kid. She briefly asked Brian questions, and he answered them all appropriately, which impressed her. "My granddaughter is a little naughty," she said, smiling at him. "Although she's almost 20, she still acts like a high school student." "Don't worry, I like her personality," he said, glancing lovingly at Yvonne. And were quite compatible. As everyone watched this exchange, they were envious. This was the first time Margaret had met Brian, and she was treating him with courtesy. Judging by her tone, she seemed to have accepted him into the family. Brian's background was indeed compatible with the Phillips family, and he looked like he would be successful in the future. Margaret believed that he would be a good addition to the family. Standing to the side, Yvonne's mother, Elizabeth, was happy. "Well, you two go and have fun," Margaret said, smiling at them. Then she glanced at Elizabeth. "Your daughter is smart. Looks like she's going to be getting married in a few years." Elizabeth beamed with pride. Margaret was satisfied with Brian and was happy with Elizabeth for having such a good daughter. Margaret slowly walked over to Alice, who immediately bowed her head slightly. "Look at her," Elizabeth thought. "She's just putting on an act." Alice's daughter Kelly had been successful at everything she did, and Margaret had always placed her above Elizabeth's children. "Where's Kelly?" Margaret asked Alice. "Why isn't she here yet?
She's not avoiding me because I told her to find a boyfriend, is she? Of course not, Alice denied. I just called her. She's on her way and should be here soon. That's good, Margaret said, nodding. As her mother, you have to push her a little more. Yvonne has found a boyfriend, and it's time Kelly found one as well. Alice respectfully replied, Yes, of course. Your grandmother seems to value your cousin more than you, Brian said to Yvonne as he watched Margaret chatting with Alice. Do you think I don't know that? Yvonne asked, staring angrily at Alice. Since we were young, Kelly could do no wrong, and she's always been the favored grandchild. In the last 2 years, grandmother's been determined to find a husband for her. It's obvious that she means to pass control of the family to Kelly someday. How are the rest of us supposed to accept that? Brian smiled confidently. Don't worry about it, he said. You have me now, and you won't lose me to your cousin. I know, she said, squeezing his arm and smiling sweetly. You're right, and nobody in the world is better than you. My cousin can't possibly do better this time. Brian wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and his gaze held a trace of evil. Since he intended to be the favored son-in-law, he couldn't let Margaret hand control of the family over to someone else. A white slowly approached. Kelly's here, called the young man, taking advantage of her arrival to get a little attention. Everyone looked over to see Kelly drive to the left side of the gate and park her. A few minutes later, Kelly stepped out of the car. She wore a short dress which showed off her long legs, and her face was beautiful. Brian had seen a lot of pretty young girls, but Kelly was much prettier than any of them. Kelly greeted her relatives as she walked through the courtyard to reach her grandmother. Grandmother, I'm sorry I'm late, she said. It doesn't matter if you're late, Margaret said, not angry at all. Kelly had always been her pride and joy. Although for a moment there I was worried that you were avoiding me, so I couldn't urge you to find a boyfriend. Oh, grandmother, I wouldn't do that, Kelly said with a faint smile. Hello, Mrs. Phillips, Sharon said. Kelly invited me. I hope that's okay. She and Kelly had been classmates since kindergarten, and they were very close, so Kelly often brought her to family gatherings. Margaret spoke to Sharon for a while, and then she noticed a young man standing behind Kelly. Everyone was staring at him, sizing him up, and trying to guess his identity. This boy was dressed very plainly, like a poor country boy. Why had Kelly brought him to the party? He wasn't her boyfriend. They were clearly from 2 different worlds. Kelly, who is this? Margaret asked. Oh, Kelly said, moving to stand next to Alex. She wanted to introduce him as a friend, but Sharon spoke first. This is Alex, Sharon explained. He's just a poor student at Preston University. He normally lives quite frugally and rarely eats in restaurants. Kelly said she wanted to bring him here to let him see what he's been missing. She was afraid Kelly would tell Margaret that Alex was her boyfriend. So that's how it is, Margaret nodded approvingly. Everyone nodded in understanding as they whispered to each other. Just by looking at his clothes, you can tell that he's poor, someone said. It'll be a good experience for him to see our family gathering. Kelly's too kind, someone else said. She's already doing a good deed aiding him at school. Bringing him to a family gathering is going a bit too far. Maybe we should give him some money and send him to have a good meal in a restaurant. I hope he works hard and gets a good job after graduating. Too many people in society get financial aid and just squander it. I hope he isn't like that, said a third person. Kelly was unhappy that Sharon had made Alex look inferior. She glanced at Alex and was starting to see that he didn't show any signs of anger at her relative's pity. Instead, he appeared very calm and collected. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned to Margaret and said, Grandmother, don't listen to Sharon. Alex isn't just some poor student. He's actually my boyfriend. She had finally said it. She didn't dare to look at Alex, afraid that he would be angry with her. What if he denied it and exposed her as a liar? Alex was surprised by Kelly's announcement. A wry smile appeared on his face. He should have guessed this would happen when he agreed to come to the party, but he simply hadn't thought it through. Margaret was stunned, as was everyone else. Kelly, you're telling me that he's your boyfriend? She asked with a serious expression. Anger blazed from her eyes. Whatever the truth was, Kelly would be able to see her disapproval and would take back her words. Yes, Kelly confirmed. Although she was afraid, she refused to back down. She was every bit as stubborn as her grandmother. She smiled, trying to ease the tension. Let me introduce you. There's no need, Margaret said. She didn't even glance at Alex. As far as she was concerned, the thought of Kelly being with this boy was a joke. Kelly, you're not to see him again. The family gathering's about to start, so send him home. Margaret turned around to leave. She had made her decision, and her word was final. But grandmother, I really like him, Kelly said. Margaret abruptly turned back. Kelly was blatantly disobeying her words, which was something that no one in the family dared to do. If it had been anyone else, she would have been furious. But Kelly was her favorite grandchild. Kelly, you know perfectly well why I don't approve of him, she said, controlling her anger. And I refuse to repeat myself, so let him go. Your grandmother's doing this for your own good, Alice said, coming to stand next to Kelly. Listen to her. If it makes you feel better, then we can help him find a job after he graduates, but you have to let him go. I'm sorry, grandmother, Kelly said, refusing to listen. I can't. What? Margaret said, glaring at her. It had been years since she had been this angry. When she realized how determined Kelly looked, she was at a loss for words. Deal with your daughter, Margaret said angrily as she looked at Alice. Her mother frowned as she said to Kelly, I don't know why you're becoming so disobedient. Kelly was hurt, but she knew that her mother had only said that because she had seen Alex wearing scruffy clothes. Her family didn't understand that she wanted a boyfriend that she really liked, not just someone with a lot of money. How could you talk back to Grandma like that? Her mother continued. Another relative asked Kelly, How could you bring a boyfriend who dresses so badly home to meet your family? Alice said, Kelly, Grandma dotes on you. You have to be more reasonable. Kelly had been told what to do by her relatives for years. They all had their own perspectives on her life and didn't consider her wishes at all. Some of her relatives started to try to smooth things over. Her uncle said, We shouldn't judge a person by his appearance. Perhaps his family has money, but he just doesn't want to show off. I don't believe that Kelly would do anything to harm their family. He walked up to Alex and said, Alex, right? Where do you live? What does your family do? Witnessing Kelly arguing with her family like this, Alex felt awful. He was contemplating telling them that he was from just inside of the Ambrose family and that they owned Warrior Enterprises. Perhaps this would appease them without him having to reveal his true identity. But before he could say anything, Kelly stepped forward and spoke up for him. He's just an ordinary student from Preston University, and he comes from an ordinary family, she said. As far as she knew, Alex was not even from an averagely wealthy family, but she didn't want him to be mocked by her family anymore. What? One of Kelly's uncles was surprised. He had been expecting Kelly to tell them all that Alex was actually from a much better family than they had all feared. But the reverse was true. He really was a nobody. Margaret heaved a sigh. Kelly really is being so disobedient today, she thought. At that moment, another person's voice came from the driveway. It was saying, This is our villa. Because the courtyard was very quiet, the person's voice could be heard very clearly. The others looked over and saw that it was Simon. He was accompanied by a beautiful girl. To Alex's horror, it was Kathy. Hey, what's going on? Simon asked as he approached. His sister Yvonne rushed over to him and, in a whisper, told him everything that had happened earlier. Only then did Simon notice that everyone's eyes were focused on Kelly and Alex. The corner of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile. Simon walked over to Alex and said proudly, So you guys did know about my cousin's boyfriend. Let me fill you in. I know all about him. Kelly said quickly, Simon, shut up. She knew that anything he said wasn't going to help. Alex had already made a bad impression on her grandmother and the rest of their family, and she didn't want Simon to make it worse. "Don't worry, I won't say any more. I can see that if I do, my cousin's gonna hit me." Simon covered his mouth in mock fear. "Speak," Margaret said to Simon. She was becoming increasingly frustrated with Kelly that day. "Okay," Simon replied obediently. He looked at his sister. He knew that she was already uncomfortable, but he decided to wind her up a little more. He said provocatively, "Remember, Kelly, it's not my fault. Grandma asked me. Even if you're angry, don't hit me." Kelly looked at him with pure hatred in her eyes. This only made him laugh. Simon cleared his throat, then looked at Alex with a wicked grin on his face. He said, "He's a poor student from Preston University. He never eats in restaurants, not even once a year." Simon had obtained quite a lot of juicy information from Kathy. "He eats the same thing for his breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. His breakfast is always grits, his lunch is bread, and his dinner is some kind of tinned soup. He only buys 2 new items of clothes a year. Sometimes he doesn't even have enough money for shampoo, so he just uses detergent to wash his hair. He's been using the same basic cell phone since high school. Even when the screen broke, he didn't have the money to get a new phone. He often takes his girlfriend out to the street vendor for hot dogs because he can't afford to eat out anywhere else." Simon continued on with defamatory information about Alex. No one in Kelly's family could believe what they were hearing, or that she would want to date such a person. Each time Simon said something new, they would gasp. They couldn't believe that someone could be so poor and live such a basic life. Kathy, who was watching everything, felt very smug when she saw Simon criticizing Alex to the whole Phillips family. She had been sure that Kelly would ditch Alex after what had happened at Simon's party, but here he was. He must have used some kind of trick to change her mind. But now, even if Kelly had fallen for Alex, he didn't stand any chance with her. The Phillipses would definitely not let a poor blood like him marry into the family, especially after what he had done. Kathy thought that Alex looked extremely pitiful standing in the middle of the crowd, and she laughed to herself. She didn't have a shred of pity for him, and only felt better as she took revenge on him. She thought, "Alex, oh Alex, do you really think just because Kelly seems to like you, everything will go smoothly for you now?" Margaret's chest rose and fell slightly as she listened to Simon speak. Her face looked sinister and scary, and a silent pressure seemed to emanate from her body. If it had been any family member other than Kelly that she had been glaring at, that person would have been kneeling on the ground at her feet, begging for her forgiveness. "I really didn't expect him to be so poor," said one of Simon's cousins. Another replied, "He's not even moderately wealthy. What made him think he could be with Kelly?" Someone asked, "Simon, how do you know him so well?" "Because his ex-girlfriend is now my girlfriend." Simon smiled proudly toward Kathy, who was obediently walking over to him. He put his arm around her shoulder. Simon introduced her to Margaret. "Grandma, her name is Kathy. She's my girlfriend." "Hello, Mrs. Phillips. I'm very pleased to meet you," Kathy said sweetly. "She's so beautiful," said one of the cousins. "Yeah, she looks like a model. Simon's got good taste," agreed another. Several relatives praised Kathy's exquisite looks. Alex was standing beside her, and Kathy knew he must feel extremely uncomfortable. While the Phillips family had criticized and rejected him, they were welcoming her with open arms. This had proved the best way of getting revenge on Alex. Her situation could only improve as part of this family, while his humiliation would grow. Margaret glanced indifferently at Kathy as she asked Simon, "You said she was this person's ex-girlfriend?" "That's right." Simon didn't understand why she was asking, but Kathy did. She became anxious. The others also understood what Margaret meant. One said, "She used to be with this guy? If he's a poor loser, then she must be. What does her family do? Are they poor like him? I bet she just wants to marry into our family for the money," concluded another. Someone else advised Simon, "It's easy to find a good-looking girl. You really have to worry about her character. Is it just your money she wants?" As he listened to the warnings from his family, Simon finally understood the meaning behind his grandmother's words. He hadn't even considered marrying Kathy into his family. All he wanted to do was have a good time with her. He had never expected that dating her would cause such a ruckus. "Grandma, actually—" He tried to explain the situation to his grandmother, but her gaze suddenly became sharp, as if she was shooting an arrow right through him. Simon was scared. He had to say the right thing now so that he wouldn't lose the love of his grandmother. He said, "Grandma, I was careless. Now I understand that if she's the kind of woman who's willing to be with this kind of man, it means that she's no good for me. I haven't known her very long, so I didn't really know what she was like. Don't worry, she'll never be part of our family." Simon became more confident as he spoke. He was sure that his explanation would get him back into his family's good books. Kathy was stunned. "Simon?" she gasped. She was already uneasy about the situation, but she had never expected Simon to abandon her so decisively. Over the past days, Simon's sweet words had convinced her that he was going to propose and that she was going to be part of a wealthy family, as she had always dreamed of. Now his words were like a dagger slashing her beautiful dreams into pieces. "Kathy, it's over. We have nothing more to say to each other. Please leave and don't bother me again," Simon said to her resolutely. He was actually quite reluctant to let her go because he wasn't quite bored with her yet. However, his family had made it clear that he had to dump her. Kathy held his hand and pleaded, "Simon, you can't treat me like this. You said you wanted to marry me." Simon couldn't shake her off no matter how hard he tried. With so many people watching, he felt humiliated that he couldn't even handle a single woman. "Get lost," he yelled at her. "Don't blame me for this. If you have to blame anyone, blame yourself for being so beautiful. Take this card. The pin is 4624. Now hurry up and get out of my sight." Simon took out a bank card from his wallet and threw it on the ground. Kathy knew there was no hope. If she stayed, she would only have to endure further humiliation. She stood up, picked up the card from the ground, turned around and ran out of the courtyard through the fancy iron gate. "Grandma, I was wrong. Please accept my apology." Simon lowered his head and walked over to Margaret. "It's good to know you've admitted your mistakes. Everything will be okay now," Margaret told him kindly. Simon nodded and stood to the side. He was relieved. "Kelly, what about you?" Margaret's gaze once again landed on Kelly. She hoped that she would admit her mistakes like Simon did. As long as she did, Margaret would forgive her too. Kelly didn't dare to meet her grandmother's eyes, but she still said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, grandmother." She didn't want to give up Alex because of her family. Margaret's body started to tremble. Kelly kept disobeying her, and she was getting really angry. A few people quickly rushed over to support her, but she pushed them away. That moment, Simon walked over to Alex and shoved him. He said angrily, "Just get lost. How dare you upset my grandmother like this?" Alex's body felt weak, and he almost fell to the ground. "Why are you pushing him? Leave him alone," Kelly scolded Simon. She hugged Alex, asking with concern, "Are you okay?" "Why are you protecting him?" one of Kelly's cousins asked her. An aunt said, "Now you've really upset Grandma." "You should show some more respect," said another. Kelly's family was really unhappy with her. She knew that if she stayed, her relatives would continue to berate her, so she decided to leave with Alex. She said, "Grandmother, I understand that you don't like him very much. Since you're so upset with us, we'll leave now." Kelly supported Alex as they walked towards the fancy metal gate. "Stop," Margaret bellowed. "You came here for a family gathering, and now you think you can leave so soon? If you leave now, you are no longer part of our family." If it was anyone else, Margaret wouldn't care so much. But Kelly was too important to her to let her go. She knew that she had to do something to shock her into staying. Kelly gritted her teeth and stopped walking. Alex coughed a few times, and Kelly patted his back. "He's obviously also a sickly person. commented one of her uncles. I really can't figure it out. Just what is she seeing him? Asked his wife. Her husband agreed. Judging from the look of him, I knew he won't live for much longer. It's time to eat, Margaret said as she looked at Kelly angrily and walked away. The servants had started to remove the reclining chairs and to bring out wine and snacks. They had placed 3 long dining tables in the courtyard. The family members sat down in their usual places. The Phillips men had also returned from their fishing trip in the Purple Dawn Lake. They included Kelly's father, Hamilton, and Simon's father, Walter. From the outside, it looked like they were talking and laughing together. But in reality, they were secretly competing for power within the Phillips family. Hamilton walked up to his wife, Alice, and daughter, Kelly. He noticed Alex, but it didn't cross his mind that he was anything to do with his family. As in the previous 2 years, Kelly's family walked toward the seats closest to Margaret's. Hamilton went to sit down with his wife and daughters. Mom, he greeted Margaret, but she didn't respond. She seemed to be upset. Don't be in such a hurry to sit down, Margaret said coldly, without even looking at him. Oh, okay. Hamilton's backside had nearly touched the chair when he awkwardly laughed and stood up once more. We have guests here today. Why don't you take a seat at the end of the table? Margaret said with a stern expression before glancing at Yvonne and Brian, who were seated at the 4th and 5th seats to her right. Yvonne, you and Brian come and sit here. Yes, Grandma, Yvonne replied sweetly. Holding Brian's arm, she happily walked to Hamilton's seat and coughed lightly, saying, Uncle, please, could you move so we can sit down? Hamilton was perplexed. Trying to retain a shred of dignity, he smiled and made way for his niece and her boyfriend to take their seats. Hamilton, Alice, and Kelly all headed toward their seats further down the table. It was only now that he noticed that the scruffy boy who didn't seem to belong was always next to Kelly. He asked his wife who the stranger was. When Alice told her, he looked angrily at Kelly. He wanted to ask her to immediately admit her mistake to her grandmother and to quickly get rid of Alex, so that they could retain their respected status within the family. However, by that time, the servants had laid the tables, and he didn't dare to lose his temper with Kelly as the meal was about to start. He would have to wait until they got home before sorting it out. Seeing that the people sitting on either side of Margaret were all from Walter's family, and that she seemed to be very satisfied with Yvonne's boyfriend, he felt even more upset with his daughter. I'm sorry about my family, Kelly whispered to Alex. She regretted begging him to come to the family reunion with her. Looking at his pale face, she was very worried. Is your throat sore? Not too bad, but I could do with some hot water, Alex replied. He didn't blame Kelly at all, but he did feel an itch in his throat. Kelly immediately waved toward a servant and asked her, Please pour me a cup of hot water. The servant agreed and was about to go get Kelly some water when Margaret stopped her. You can do it yourself, she said coldly to Kelly. Then she turned away and continued chatting with Walter and his family. Kelly looked at her grandmother with resentment. Then she was pained when she remembered how her grandmother had helped her before. She said to Alex, Come on, we'll go to the house to get you a drink. Grandma also has tea leaves, so I'll make you some tea. That'll help you feel better. As she spoke, she helped Alex up, and they were about to head to the house for a drink. They were stopped by Hamilton, who said in a solemn voice, Kelly, sit down. The anger in his voice made Alex's heart tremble. He didn't want Kelly to be in trouble with her family, so he said softly, I'll go by myself. It's okay. You don't know where everything is. I'll go with you, Kelly replied, acting as if she had not heard her father's words. She had decided that she no longer cared if her entire family turned against her. In fact, she wanted them to see that she wasn't afraid to stand up to them. With everyone watching, Kelly supported Alex as they slowly walked into the house. Margaret didn't appear to care that they were defying the family, but as Kelly walked past her, she shook her head and sighed softly. Damn, Margaret said to herself, trying to get a better understanding of her family's situation. Walter and his wife Elizabeth were quietly listening. Only Yvonne seemed unaffected as she continued playing with her cell phone. Suddenly, she opened her eyes wide and shouted excitedly, "Oh, wow!"
"This girl," Margaret said with a smile. She was very impressed with Brian, and she was also very fond of Yvonne. She patted the back of Brian's hand gently and said, "Don't mind me, Brian. This girl is always excited about something or other."
"Who, me, Grandma?"
Yvonne smiled as she pouted at her grandmother.
She put her phone on the table and said to her family, "Look at this. Aren't you all shocked? Mr. Catullo, the president of the Corporation of Italy, is in America."
Brian picked up her phone and read it out to everyone. The news was that the president of Italy had come to America in person to deliver the world's most expensive brand new big boy to a mysterious buyer. The car was worth over $2 million. Brian calmly told everyone, "This is interesting news. It's founded in 1929 by Enzo, world-famous manufacturer of Formula One cars. Ferrari's cars are handmade and very few are produced. As of 2018, a total of only 14,628 new cars have been made." Margaret's eyes lit up as she watched Brian and thought, to know so much about one particular news story, this young man clearly has an impressive depth and range of knowledge. Walter and Elizabeth both smiled at Brian with satisfaction. Walter said,
"Brian, you seem to know quite well."
Brian replied casually, "You flatter me, Mr. Phillips. Actually, I bought a long ago, and at that time I did a lot of research into the company." Hearing that Brian owned a firm, Walter was pleasantly surprised. He rubbed his hands as he contemplated the possibility of taking it for a spin.
"What? You drive a Ferrari? Why didn't I see it when I arrived? How did I miss it?"
Brian replied humbly, "Oh, you didn't see it because I didn't drive it here today. If you'd like to try it out, I can get someone to drive it over here." He was determined to make a good impression on the Phillips family and lay a solid foundation for his marriage to Yvonne. He had planned to keep his as a backup plan, but since the topic had come up, he decided to use it now to impress his future in-laws. Walter replied excitedly,
"Can you? I'd really appreciate it if you can get someone to drive your car over here. I would love to try it out and find out what it feels like to drive the world's best luxury car."
Walter was very proud of his future son-in-law and wanted him to bring the car over to show off in front of the rest of the family. No one else in their family owned a frame. "Okay," Brian agreed. He immediately called a member of his staff and told him to bring his car over. Margaret watched Brian and quietly nodded her head. A satisfied smile appeared on her face. A few minutes later, the servants started to bring out the plates of food and place them in the middle of the long table for everyone to help themselves. Kelly accompanied Alex back to the table, carrying a cup of tea for him. He had drunk some hot water in the house and was feeling much better. They walked to their seats and sat down. Everyone started their meal and chatted as they ate. Alex realized that he was a little hungry and helped himself to some vegetables and salad. But just as he was putting the salad onto his plate, he noticed that the man sitting opposite him was staring at him in disgust and muttering obscenities to himself. The man said to him, "Aren't you afraid about infecting the rest of us if you're sick? You're so thoughtless." His wife agreed. "I certainly won't be eating from any of the dishes that this sickly boy's touched. I don't want to catch anything." Kelly was annoyed when she heard them discussing Alex in such a derogatory manner. However, she already knew that none of her family liked him, so it didn't seem worth getting angry with these two in particular. "Don't worry about them," she said to Alex. "Tell me what you want to eat and I'll serve you." She continued in a whisper as she spooned some stew onto his plate. The meal went on without incident, and the family members continued to chat happily amongst themselves. Halfway through the meal, Alex's phone rang. Everyone watched him with contempt as he pulled out his cell phone. It was such a cheap brand that they all concluded that he must be a complete, and their opinions of him sank even lower. Of course, they all had the latest expensive models. Alex looked at the number on his phone. It was the manager of the New York Auto Exhibition Center. "It must be news about my new," he thought as he answered the phone.
"Hello, Mr. Ambrose. the caller said excitedly. "I've kept you waiting for a long time, but I'm pleased to say that the new super luxurious Ferrari that you ordered has now been delivered to New York. Where are you now? I'll bring it to you." Alex was surprised. He answered, "The car is here in New York? But I still have half the money to pay, don't I?" "Wait a moment. I'll call the manager at the First Republic Bank and get him to transfer the rest of the $2 million to you." The manager replied, "Oh, didn't you know? The payment has already been taken care of." It turned out that while Alex had been recuperating at the Azalea guest house and had been completely focused on Debbie's disappearance, Ken Stokes had taken a call from the photography company asking for the rest of the money and had settled it for him. "Oh, that's brilliant," Alex replied happily. "Right now I'm at the Western Villa in the southwest corner of Purple Dawn Lake. It's easy to find. Please, get it sent here." "Yes, Mr. Ambrose. It'll be there shortly. We'll deliver it to you right now." The manager agreed respectfully and ended the call. Alex put his phone away and realized that everyone was looking at him curiously. Simon rubbed his chin and asked him with a smile, "Alex, what were you just talking about that was worth $2 million? What's going on? Tell us about it." "It's nothing really. I just bought a car," Alex replied and started eating a salad. There was a moment of silence at the table before everyone in the family burst into laughter. "You're awesome," laughed Simon sarcastically as he gave Alex a thumbs up. "I'd like to ask which car you're buying for $2 million. Or is that only half the total cost? Why don't you tell us?" "That's right, tell us all," laughed Walter. Simon continued, $4 million? I don't know there was such an expensive car in the entire country." Walter scoffed at Alex. "You're apparently so rich and yet you're still coming to our house to eat our food?" The rest of Kelly's family started to jeer as well. But Alex ignored them and continued to eat. He felt no obligation to explain himself to them. A few minutes later, Margaret spoke up. She said, "Alex, you can't just keep eating and ignoring us. I was under the impression that you want to date my granddaughter and so get into our good books. Since you bought a car, why can't you tell us about it?" She looked at him sternly. She believed that his answer was sure to demonstrate to Kelly for once and for all what a this man was. Alex didn't answer. He had guessed exactly what Margaret was trying to do. He was actually very unimpressed with the Phillips family and didn't care at all what they thought of him. Margaret and her family interrupted Alex's attitude as contempt and a lack of respect. Kelly knew her grandmother and understood that Alex's approach was making her furious. No matter what car Alex had bought, it was best to just be honest about it, or the situation would get worse. She tried to settle things. "Alex, you and Grandma—" Suddenly there was a loud thud. Margaret had slammed her fist on the table, startling everyone. "Kelly, take a look at this man you insist on defending," she said angrily. Then she turned her gaze to Alex and said, "If you can't even be bothered to tell us, then leave. Go on, you're not welcome here." Alex slowly put down his cutlery and met Margaret's gaze. He could see the burning anger in her eyes, but he remained calm. "It's a puppy. I bought a puppy," Alex said. Margaret's expression became more furious. She glared at Alex, and her hands clenched into fists on the table. He obviously couldn't afford so now he was just trying to make fools of them. "Alex, how much did you pay for the fried?" Brian asked as he looked at him. He knew that everyone was angry with Alex, especially Margaret, and he realized that if he could help them embarrass Alex or help them chase him off, he would win the respect of everyone in the family. This Alex was a thick-skinned, and Brian had his way of dealing with it. "Over $2 million, Alex replied, looking at him. "Oh." Brian was surprised. He had not expected Alex to be able to lie so masterfully without showing any signs of panic. He seemed to be an expert liar. No wonder Kelly had been fooled by him. He continued to question Alex about the car. "So what kind of money did you order? How much did you have to pay in advance? What's its top speed? How many seconds for it to go from 0 to 60? Having bought his own, Brian knew what was involved. He was sure that he could catch Alex out by asking these questions that he wouldn't be able to answer. Alex frowned and looked at Brian. He said, "What? Why are you asking me all these questions? When I bought the car, it was very simple. I just asked them to manufacture to the highest standards possible and using the most advanced technology available." He only managed to evoke more contempt and loathing from those around him. They couldn't believe that he would lie so outrageously. Brian clapped his hands toward him and said, "I'm asking you all the same detailed questions that the Ferrari company asks any customer who wants to order a car. If you can't answer the questions, it means you clearly haven't actually ordered a car from them. Although I have to admit that your answer is very clever, that you asked them to do it according to the best standards. Of course, that would make all the other questions unnecessary." It sounded like praise for Alex, but everyone could hear the irony in Brian's words. Simon said disapprovingly, "You want us to believe that not only have you bought Burberry, but also that you ask them to give you the highest spec available? If you have that much money, I suggest that you buy yourself a decent set of clothes first." Brian said with a chuckle, "Hey, Simon, maybe Alex really does own several $100 million. Maybe he keeps it all in the First Republic Bank." Another round of laughter arose in the garden. "Yes, that's right, he's a billionaire. Maybe he actually lives in the First Republic Bank." Simon was laughing so hard that his stomach hurt. He gave Brian a thumbs up and said, "Buddy, he's finished." Alex frowned and started to breathe heavily. "Alex," Kelly said softly. She felt that Brian and her family had gone too far. Alex adjusted his mood and smiled at Kelly. "It's all right," he reassured her. Since these people were treating him with animosity, he decided to get his own back. He grabbed Kelly's hand, thinking to himself, "Are you all just going to let me grab her and not say anything? Aren't you all afraid that a poor like me is going to... Kelly, I'm interested to see what you'll do." Kelly blushed when he took her hand, as her worry for him quickly turned into warmth and surprise. When Margaret saw them, she wanted to Alex there and then. Brian stood up and walked over to them, saying, "All right, since you said you ordered a fan car for $2 million, then I'll ask you the simplest question. When did you order your car?" With a smile, he continued, "If you can't even tell us that, then please, show some dignity and leave. Otherwise, I don't mind helping you find your way out." "Brian is ex-military, so kicking out this took-line shall be no problem for him." Yvonne took the opportunity to shout. "Why are you—" Kelly wanted to fight for Alex, but he pulled her back and smiled confidently. "It's fine," he said. Facing Brian's ultimatum, Alex didn't show the slightest hint of fear. He looked even more relaxed than Brian. "Less than 2 months ago," he said in answer to Brian's question. Hearing his reply, Brian laughed contemptuously. "Ha ha!" He laughed as he looked at Alex with eyes full of disdain. "How much longer do you want to keep up this pretense? I know for a fact that it takes at least 3 months to get a car from... If you don't believe me, you can check it out on your own. And you told us that you've ordered the our car, which uses the most advanced technology and to the highest standards. How could that be manufactured in less than 3 months? Come on, explain that to everyone. If you can't, then there's nothing else to say, and you can please leave right now." "Speak," shouted Simon. "He knows the game is up," said a cousin. Another cousin told everyone, "I just checked online and found that Brian's right. The shortest time to get a 3 months. And you're trying to tell us that you're getting the highest standard car manufactured and delivered in less than 2 months. Why don't you just leave now? We've had enough of your lies." The family members all glared at Alex. Alex drank a mouthful of tea and said calmly, "I gave them an extra few thousand and asked them to work overtime to make my car more quickly. Are you satisfied with that?" "Hey, I originally wanted to let you leave this place with dignity. I never thought you could be so thick-skinned," Brian said in a condescending tone. He turned and said to the family, "Everyone, I think I understand why this person said that.
It was reported in the news recently that the CEO of came to America himself to deliver a top-of-the-range car worth $2 million to a mysterious buyer. He must have seen the article and made up this lie to try to prove to us that he's rich. That's right, search CEO. You'll see the article, Yvonne told the others enthusiastically. The others searched on their cell phones, and it was exactly as Brian said. Brian said confidently, he thought he was very smart, but in fact, it only proved how stupid he is. Only a few people in America can afford these cars. Did he really think that we would believe one of them was him?
I don't know if he's insulting everyone's IQ or insulting his own IQ.
His gaze fell on Alex as he told him, I'll give you one last chance. Leave immediately. Alex coughed softly and said, You're imagining things. You haven't proved that I'm a liar at all. Everything I said is true.
How shameless, said one of Kelly's aunts. Her husband agreed. I've never met such a shameless person in my life. Simon, throw this pervert out. Use your taekwondo on him, shouted the aunt.
Brian continued, All right, since you don't want to leave by yourself, I'll have to throw you out. But after I've finished with you, you might well have to go to the hospital. As he said this, he cracked his neck, making a grating sound. He walked toward Alex. Kelly spread out her arms and stood in front of Alex, shouting,
Stop, don't touch him.
It's fine, Alex said as he moved Kelly out of the way. She was frantic with worry for him. If he had been healthy, she knew that Brian would be no match for him. But now Alex was sick, and he could easily get badly hurt. Alex sat on the chair, and with a trace of a smile on his face, he said to Brian, I advise you not to touch me. If you do, I guarantee you'll regret it. He didn't seem to be afraid at all. How can he be so calm? Brian thought, and he hesitated. He had been a professional taekwondo fighter, so he was very sensitive to his opponent's mood. He couldn't sense any real aggression or fear in Alex. However, the calmness in his words sent a shiver up his spine. Fear of the unknown overwhelmed him, and his heart was enveloped with an acute sense of danger. You heard correctly. There'll be someone delivering my car in a while. What I said is the truth, and this will be revealed. Why are you in such a hurry? Alex asked. He was still surprisingly unflustered. Brian replied, That sounds fine. Don't think that we're bullying you. We just want you to tell the truth. If there isn't really a car coming, I hope you finally know your place and will leave. If not, I promise that I won't show you any mercy. Alex looked at him and agreed. When Brian had insulted him with the words, know your place, he clenched his fists but remained composed. Just at that moment, headlights shone into the courtyard, and a sapphire blue car pulled up. Walter looked carefully at the car for a few seconds before exclaiming in a surprise,
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.